The smell of fresh coffee and cut grass still lingers in my mind from that last peaceful morning. I sat on my backyard patio in Willow Creek Estates reviewing the $2 million state environmental education grant with Commissioner Elena Vargas when tires screeched like a war cry and a gleaming white Escalade parked sideways across my driveway. Out stormed Victoria Langford, HOA president, neighborhood saint on paper, suburban dictator in heels, shoving a glossy violation notice in my face while her phone recorded everything. Those hideous solar panels are an illegal eyesore destroying our aesthetic standards, Mr. Caldwell, she snarled, camera flashing like paparazzi at a crime scene. This entire backyard classroom project is condemned. You're done here. Commissioner Vargas nearly choked on her espresso, staring at the woman who just declared war on a guy having breakfast with the state's top environmental enforcer. I watched Victoria's perfectly Botoxed smile widen as she thought she'd scared off another pushover. She had no idea she just kicked the hornet's nest of the wrong retired solar engineer. My name is Garrett Caldwell, 52, 30 years designing municipal grids before I cashed out and moved into this cookie-cutter paradise after my wife Emily passed. Her last clear words in that sterile hospital room still echoed. Turn our yard into something that teaches the kids what we're fighting to save. So I'd spent 2 years quietly building Emily's eco-hub. Modular solar sheds doubling as outdoor classrooms, raised garden beds for sustainability lessons, panels gleaming like mirrors against the perfectly trimmed hedges. The state grant would let us host free weekend programs for neighborhood kids, teaching them solar works not just looks pretty on a brochure. Which explained why Commissioner Vargas was here at dawn with bacon and paperwork, nodding approvingly at my blueprints. This could be the model for every subdivision in the state, she'd said, tapping the grant proposal. Governor's office is fast-tracking it. Then the diesel roar turned our peaceful patio into a battlefield. Victoria's heels clicked across my flagstones like gunfire. I'm Victoria Langford, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, and this commercial eyesore ends today. She waved at her lackey snapping photos of my panels like they were war crimes. Vargas's face shifted from friendly bureaucrat to state official watching a potential civil rights violation unfold live. She slipped a small recorder into my palm under the table. Document everything, she whispered, standing. Emergency call from the governor's office. I'll be in touch within the hour. Victoria practically purred with satisfaction as Vargas's sedan disappeared down the cul-de-sac. She thought she'd run off some paper pusher. She had no clue she just threatened a state grant recipient in front of the woman who could trigger a full investigation. Smart move scaring off your government friend, Victoria said, shoving a thick envelope at me that reeked of toner and desperation. $15,000 in compliance fines plus removal of every panel within 30 days. Our covenants clearly prohibit anything that disrupts the French country aesthetic. She photographed my solar array like it personally offended her. Here's where Victoria's little legal fantasy hit a wall. My property predated her precious HOA by 15 years. My grandfather built this house before the subdivision even existed. But watching her document violations, with the zeal of a reality TV villain, I realized this wasn't about aesthetics. This was a bully who'd spent years crushing anyone who didn't bow to her vision of perfect conformity. Emily's wind chimes, handmade copper ones she'd hung the week before her diagnosis, tinkled softly in the breeze, completely at odds with Victoria's venom. She just declared war on my dead wife's memory, and I was done playing nice. The next morning I was sipping coffee, reading Vargas's encrypted text. Inspection flagged, stay calm. When the county building truck rumbled up. Out stepped Dale Kruger, clipboard clutched like a shield, sweat already beading despite the cool air. Mr. Caldwell, got complaints about your electrical setup. Mrs. Langford filed formal paperwork. Through my binoculars I spotted Victoria's Escalade lurking at the corner like a suburban spy. What kind of complaints exactly, Dale? He shifted. Off-grid solar allegedly violates county codes. I'm authorized to red tag everything. His voice dropped. She's offering serious cash to make problems disappear. $8,000 in fees or I shut you down today. My phone started exploding with calls from parents who'd signed up for the EcoHub's pilot weekend. Somehow word had leaked about electrical dangers. 20 families were panicking their kids might get fried by solar panels. Here's what most homeowners don't know about solar codes. I learned it designing grids for half the municipalities in the state. Self-contained systems under 10 kilowatts don't need permits if they're completely off-grid. Only grid-tied setups trigger the bureaucracy. Dale's clipboard trembled when I slid my folder across the table. Original protocols I'd helped write in 1998, every stamp, every certification bearing my signature. Your system exceeds standards by 300%, I said calmly. Withdraw the red tag or I file bribery charges with the state licensing board. Dale practically levitated off my patio. Within an hour Vargas texted again. Kruger's history under review, pattern of fraudulent tags tied to developers. Victoria thought she was fighting a grieving widower with a hobby project. She had no idea she just poked the guy whose direct line now rang straight to the state capitol. That evening my neighbor Magnus Olson showed up with a mason jar of something that smelled like jet fuel and regret. At 78, Magnus had watched enough neighborhood politics to smell blood in the water. That Langford witch was snooping around my place too, he grumbled, settling into Emily's old rocking chair. Photographed my rain barrels, claimed my compost might be an environmental hazard. He took a sip that would drop a horse. Funny thing, I've got original subdivision maps in my basement from 1987. Show the entire HOA sits on what was supposed to be protected green belt. My engineering brain started calculating. Those maps could prove selective enforcement, maybe even illegal variances pushed through with bribes. Mind if I take a look? Magnus grinned. Son, I was hoping you'd ask. As twilight painted the identical roof's gold, I realized Victoria's first strike had handed me 3 gifts. Evidence of corruption, state backing, and a neighbor with documents that could blow her little empire apart. Tomorrow she'd escalate. Tonight I was actually looking forward to it. A week later I was setting up the first outdoor science station for 20 excited kids when a shiny new truck with Cascade Environmental Solutions, painted fresh on the side, pulled up. Out stepped Rico Langford, same last name, same smug grin. Emergency complaint about groundwater contamination, he announced, unpacking equipment that still had Home Depot stickers. The kids froze. Their parents had trusted me. What kind of contamination? I asked, watching him dip a drugstore peach meter into my garden well like he was mixing Kool-Aid. The dangerous kind requiring immediate evacuation. He spent 4 minutes testing before declaring my property a toxic zone. Health department will order everyone out within the hour. I recommend my cousin's contractor for the $25,000 fix. My phone rang, County Health confirming the evacuation order. 20 kids, 20 families, all told their children might have been poisoned while learning about saving the planet. The irony tasted like battery acid. But Rico's amateur hour crumbled when I noticed him photographing not just the well but my entire setup. Mind showing me your state certification? His swagger vanished. It's being renewed. 20 minutes later an EPA field agent arrived with real equipment and 0 patients. Proper chain of custody samples went to certified labs. Results the next day. My water cleaner than most city supplies. Rico's contaminated samples? From the retention pond 2 miles away near an old industrial site. When I called Victoria demanding answers, she hissed, "This valley will be developed my way or else." But Vargas's follow-up text changed everything. Rico's cooperating. Turns out your HOA president's been running the same scam in 3 subdivisions. Fake crises, forced sales, kickbacks. Magnus arrived that night with the 1987 maps. They showed Willow Creek estates built over what should have been protected wetlands. Illegal variances pushed through county offices in the late 80s. The developer? Victoria's late husband. No wonder she was desperate to control every backyard that might expose the truth. The certified zoning letter arrived like a guillotine the next morning. Notice of immediate cease operations. Unlicensed commercial recreation facility. 30 kids were due tomorrow for the first official EcoHub session. Parents had driven from 3 counties. Retroactive fees would top $40,000. My phone rang. Vargas again. Emergency zoning hearing in 2 hours. They leaked your grant application to the board. I raced through nonprofit incorporation paperwork, turning Emily's dream into a federally protected educational entity in under 90 minutes. The hearing room smelled of desperation and cheap coffee. Victoria sat front row, evidence folder thick as a tombstone. Chairman Park read the charges. Paid activities involving minors, commercial enterprise disguised as education. Victoria stood like a prosecutor. Photographic proof of playground equipment and fee-based instruction. Plus the grant application proves it's not a hobby. It's a business. The room went silent. Someone with federal access had fed her my documents word for word. I opened my laptop. I'd like to submit federal nonprofit incorporation papers filed this morning. Educational nonprofits fall under federal jurisdiction during review. Local zoning doesn't apply. Victoria's composure cracked. You can't just incorporate your way out of violations. But the board's own attorney quietly confirmed, federal status created complications. Her folder slammed shut like a coffin lid. That evening Vargas texted, grant approved, 2.1 million. But Garrett, someone inside leaked it. This goes deeper. Magnus and I spread the old maps across my kitchen table. The pieces clicked. Victoria wasn't just enforcing rules. She was protecting a 40-year cover-up of illegal wetland development that let the entire subdivision exist. Her fear wasn't about solar panels. It was about survival. Victoria's next move came at 5 a.m. Magnus showed up clutching a weathered metal box that smelled of old paper and buried secrets. Couldn't sleep after what you said about her having city connections, he whispered. Daddy was on the original planning board. Kept copies of everything. Inside were letters proving Victoria's husband had bribed county officials in 1987 to reclassify protected wetlands as buildable. Signatures matched the developer's, her own husband. And the county clerk who signed off? The current commissioner's late father. The room felt colder than the morning air. If the commissioner was protecting family legacy instead of the environment, I'd been feeding evidence to the wrong side. My phone buzzed, her number. For the first time I hesitated before answering. Emergency meeting, my office, 1 hour, Vargas said without greeting. Complications that could destroy everything. Magnus grabbed my wrist. Son, you walk in there, you might not walk out with the same story. We spent the day building our own case. Dear Elena Reyes, university geologist who documented wetland damage for 20 years, only to watch her reports vanish in the commissioner's office. Rosa Patel, the environmental attorney who'd expedited my nonprofit filing, her family ranch seized in the original land grab. Tommy Lightfoot from the local tribal council whose ancestral buffer zone overlapped the illegal fill. By afternoon we had geological surveys, legal briefs, and sovereign nation complaints ready to bypass the state entirely. But we needed eyes inside Vargas's circle. They all looked at me. You want me to wear a wire on the state's top environmental official? That evening I sat in Vargas's office wearing Rosa's tiny recorder, palms sweating. She spread surveillance photos across her desk, night vision shots of figures cutting my solar cables, dumping chemicals near the kids' garden beds. Professional sabotage team, she said, voice dripping concern that felt rehearsed. The photos were too perfect, timestamps covering weeks I never authorized. How long have your people been watching my property without telling me? Her pause lasted 3 seconds too long. Then she slid another photo. Magnus carrying his document box, Rosa delivering files, Elena photographing the wetlands. Unfortunately, our surveillance also captured your unauthorized meetings with individuals who may be compromising the investigation. My blood ran cold. While she kept me distracted, Victoria's crew had hit Magnus' house, power outage that nearly killed his oxygen machine, and Elena's office was ransacked. Professional. Targeted. They knew exactly what to steal. Magnus survived, barely. In the ICU he gripped my hand. Wasn't no outage, son. Heard vehicles at midnight. Someone cut my line and messed with the backup battery. Elena called next, her files gone. Rosa's office burglarized. The pattern was clear. Victoria and Vargas were cleaning house before the grant money locked everything down. But they'd made one fatal mistake. Magnus had hidden multiple copies, safety deposit boxes, tribal archives, even waterproof tubes buried on protected land. They think destroying evidence saves them, Rosa said on our emergency call. They just proved how desperate they are. We filed directly with the regional federal prosecutors the next morning. Environmental crimes on former wetland, conspiracy, attempted murder. DOJ took jurisdiction instantly. Vargas couldn't block it. The court order for Magnus' psychiatric evaluation arrived the same day Victoria petitioned to have him declared incompetent. Concerned community members claimed dementia after his medical emergency. The hearing was scheduled the same afternoon as Vargas's planned press conference. Timing wasn't coincidence. Dear Franklin Pierce, court-appointed shrink, showed up at the hospital with a condescending smile. Mr. Olson, tell me about these conspiracy theories. Magnus stared him down. Son, I was documenting government corruption before you learned to spell. Pierce made notes like he was diagnosing crazy. That's when Rosa walked in with 2 federal marshals and bank records showing Pierce had received 6-figure payments from Victoria's personal accounts over the last year. Pierce's clipboard hit the floor. Another piece of the network exposed. Tommy Lightfoot arrived with the game changer. Tribal Council had filed sovereign complaints directly with the Department of Justice. State officials couldn't touch it. As sunset painted the hospital room gold, Magnus grinned through his oxygen mask. Tomorrow's gonna be interesting, son. The taste of justice was sweeter than hospital jello. Victoria's desperate play to silence our star witness had just handed federal prosecutors the bribery trail they needed. The county courthouse steps looked like a circus when I arrived the next morning. News vans, federal agents, half the neighborhood gathered like it was Black Friday. Vargas stood at the podium flanked by FBI and DOJ prosecutors, Victoria seated front row with her legal team, smirking like she'd already won. She had no idea the script had flipped. Today we announced the conclusion of a federal investigation into corruption affecting Willow Creek estates. Vargas began, voice steady. The crowd murmured. Victoria's smirk held. Until the tone shifted. Systematic fraud involving illegal wetland development, environmental crimes, conspiracy, and attempts to silence witnesses. FBI agents moved through the crowd. Victoria's face drained of color as cuffs clicked around her wrists. Victoria Langford, you are under arrest for conspiracy to defraud the federal government, environmental violations on protected land, bribery, and operating a criminal enterprise. Cameras rolled as Dale Kruger, Rico Langford, Dur. Pierce, and 3 county officials were led away in the same sweep. Vargas wasn't done. The investigation also revealed this corruption network reached into state government. She looked straight at the cameras. As commissioner, I am recusing myself due to potential conflicts involving my late father's role in the original approvals. Political suicide, live on every channel. Magnus stepped forward with his folder, voice strong despite the hospital stay. These 1987 documents prove the entire subdivision was built illegally. Subsequent cover-ups involved systematic bribery. Flashbulbs exploded. Elena confirmed. EPA was taking custody of the illegally developed wetlands for full restoration. Rosa announced a $50 million federal victim compensation fund. No innocent families would lose homes without fair payment. Then the sweetest moment. A U.S. Marshal handed me papers establishing the Emily Caldwell Federal Environmental Learning Center, with $5 million in dedicated funding. Victoria's empire of fear was gone. Her McMansion was already being seized. 6 months later, I sat on the same patio where Victoria once screamed about aesthetics. Federal crews were planting native wildflowers where her enforcement signs used to stand. The air smelled like fresh soil and poetic justice. The trials were swift. Victoria got 12 years plus millions in restitution. Federal judges don't like attempted murder via oxygen machines. Rico lost his license. Pierce's medical license was revoked forever. Vargas testified against her family's legacy and avoided prison by helping expand the investigation. The displaced families received fair compensation. 12 chose to rebuild sustainably under new federal guidelines. Magnus, now 79, gives daily tours as official historian of the restored wetlands. The EcoHub graduated its first class in December, 30 kids who left as passionate environmental advocates. One girl, Maria, just got accepted to Stanford Earth Sciences. Another, Jamal, started a neighborhood solar club that's spreading to 3 other subdivisions. The economic boom surprised everyone. Ecotourism and weekend workshops bring families who actually want to learn, not just post perfect lawns on Instagram. Our community store became an education hub with an organic cafe and equipment rental that employs 20 locals. Tribal cultural programs run by Tommy teach kids how land protection and heritage go hand in hand. Federal protections now guarantee these 200 acres stay wild educational space forever. Legal precedents we set are helping neighborhoods nationwide fight similar HOA overreach. Evening light filters through the solar panels as Emily's wind chimes sing with children's laughter. Her dream grew bigger than our backyard. Now it's inspiring communities across the country. So here's the question that keeps me up at night, and maybe you too. Was Garrett Caldwell the real villain for quietly defying ridiculous HOA rules to honor his wife's last wish, or was Victoria Langford, the smiling face of community standards, the true criminal all along? Drop your thoughts below. Have you ever fought an HOA Karen and won? Federal agencies read these comments. Your story might spark the next investigation. Hit subscribe for more HOA justice stories where ordinary homeowners finally flip the script. Next week, the property war that ended when the FBI raided an entire city council. Some promises take years, but they're worth every fine, every threat, and every moment you refuse to bow to bullies who think power means never facing consequences. That's a wrap. See you in the comments, neighbors.